80% on average of the supplements on Amazon, and today is Amazon Prime Day, 80% do not meet label claim, meaning they test short of what's on the label. About 30% had no active at all. This is Now Foods that did this testing. And you have probably a third of the products of the most premium brands on Amazon are counterfeit products.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 326. I'm talking to Shawn Wells, who is a guru into nutritional supplements. He's been called the world's greatest formulator. He doesn't live that far away from me. I saw him speak at a conference here in Austin a little while back, and we're just going to talk about supplements because I haven't done enough about alternative health on this show, but I'm certainly willing to look into this. So, how are you, Shawn?
I am doing amazingly today. I'm here, in Dripping Springs, and
Yes.
You're where? What town are you in?
I'm actually well, I don't want to go totally, but I'm in Travis County, Texas. So,
Oh, okay, cool.
I don't want to tell exactly for this show, but
Sure.
you're in Hayes County, and as our listeners are probably hearing, it's been pretty awful around here with the rains and the floods. We've got over 100 deaths, and and I want to warn everybody: Texas does not put crowns in the roads, so you can be driving along and hit standing water. It's got to be one of the most ridiculously incompetent things I've ever seen. But I actually texted a senator about that. Put crowns in the roads, but hopefully, I don't know if we'll hear any good news on the people that are still missing at this point. But because if somebody's missing, they probably, if they were alive, they would have been aware that they're missing and saying, "Hey, I'm not missing." But it's been a sad time. I hope, and I certainly hope for the best for the people who've been impacted by this. I don't know anybody personally, but it's been pretty awful. But anyway, Shawn, so how'd you get into all this supplement stuff?
So that's a great question. Like, I feel like we all kind of have our hero's journey of sorts. If we kind of become the best at what we are in our field, like there's usually the why behind it. And for me, I went through pretty difficult health journey, both mental and physical. I've battled suicidal thoughts, clinical depression, anxiety, PTSD a lot of my life. And then that led to morbid obesity. It led to me being anorexic at certain phases. I went from over 300 to down to 150 at 6'3".
Oh, yeah.
And then, then I was orthorexic, where I was working out 24/7. It was all I thought about was my meals and the supplements. And at no point was I happy with my body. And then that body dysmorphia played into a lot of immune health issues, where I got Epstein-Barr, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, Hashimoto's. I got brain tumors. I couldn't get out of bed for about 6 months. And this led me down the rabbit hole of trying to find solutions. And that's when I worked heavily on not only paleo, keto, intermittent fasting, but also supplements. And I've learned so much about it. And I went to Chapel Hill and got my master's in nutrition and biochemistry, became a registered dietitian, worked 10 years as a chief clinical dietitian in acute care and long-term care, and then eventually got into supplements, which was my dream field. And I've formulated about 1,200 supplements to this point, patented about 40 unique ingredients. I have a best-selling book called The Energy Formula. We just released a chorus on it. And I speak on stage all over the world about biohacking, psychedelics, mental health,
Mhm.
supplements. So that's supplements is definitely my thing. I'm like you said, I'm known as the world's greatest formulator, and I take a lot of pride in that. But yeah, that passion came from pain for sure.
Yeah, I'm finding that happens with a lot of people, especially sometimes at a young age. They just spend their
Hmm.
time looking for these solutions, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's also the same reason why people choose careers in psychology. It's uh, they might have had a health crisis when they're early, or they had, or sometimes also they had somebody close to them who had a health crisis. It's
Yeah.
uh, so what should people do when what should people be aware of when they're looking for supplements? Because there are a lot of supplements out there that are just you might as well just throw your money away. But there are supplements that do work as well.
Great question. So here we go. 80% on average of the supplements on Amazon, and today is Amazon Prime Day, 80% do not meet label claim, meaning they test short of what's on the label. About 30% had no active at all. This is Now Foods that did this testing. And you have probably a third of the products of the most premium brands on Amazon are counterfeit products.
Oh wow.
Then you have products that may meet label claim at time of manufacture but aren't stable. Creatine gummies have been a big issue not only by Now Foods but Supco with their testing because creatine is not stable in a damp or moist environment or a wet environment, meaning you can't put it into a gummy, you can't put it into a solution. And so it's converting into creatinine. So these creatine gummies, none of them tested out. So we're in a situation right now where Amazon is where most of the people are buying their supplements, and most of the supplements they're buying are not legitimate. And this doesn't even get into proprietary blends, where I believe most of those products could test out, but they do something called fairy dusting because it's not full transparency. And in your proprietary blend, meaning this is, you call the blend the muscle and strength blend or the brain booster blend, and it's 1800 milligrams. That first ingredient listed in the blend could be 99% of that. And all the other ingredients listed below it could be the other 1%. You have to list them in order of descending mass by
Yeah,
law. And that's it. So do not buy supplements that have proprietary blends. Do not buy from a brand that isn't a well known brand. Do not buy that well known brand from an unknown seller because it could be counterfeit.
yeah,
And make sure you do your research on if that ingredient is a legitimate ingredient, has the studies behind it, and it's in the right standardization, the right plant part, the right dose in that supplement. And you can look those things up on places like PubMed or examine.com. But you have to be careful in what you're buying. Here's the last one I'll give you is I talked about all the things you're not getting potentially in the supplement, but sometimes you're getting things you don't want in there, like heavy metals, bacteria, metabolites of drugs because the blenders weren't cleaned very well, and then you test positive for a drug or get sick. So this is a huge concern. I love
yeah,
supplements, but you have to buy trusted supplements from trusted suppliers.
yeah. So you're basic. One thing you're saying really is just don't buy from Amazon at all. And it's unfortunate because that seems to be the default where people go. And it's does Amazon care about counterfeits? That's a serious question. I
The Now Foods testing that's been over the last 3 years, Now Foods, if you remember, I mean, they're more than 30 years old. They dominated in big box stores and
yeah,
specialty, and they're that orange, white, and kind of purple brand. Great brand, low cost, amazing quality control. But they've been losing for years to these things on Amazon that are beating their prices because they have no active at all, and they're a one-man show and they're not doing any testing. And of course, they're winning in the Amazon algorithm because they're the cheapest. And then on Amazon, we all know that you can manipulate reviews. So we're in a situation where, yes, Now Foods and other companies that are now testing products from Now Foods, like Supco, like um, some of these independent third-party companies, and even labs like Alchemist have been testing products. And we're seeing a lot of issues. And Amazon is aware. They're trying to make changes, but they're also benefiting from this. So it's like we're trying to make changes, but we're also aware that we're making billions of dollars on supplements. It could be one of the top categories on Amazon. And it's crushed places like GNC, Vitamin Shop, bodybuilding.com, Walgreens, CVS, you name it. And so they're benefiting. And so there's some change that's happening, but I wouldn't say it's radical change.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely not helping GNC. Although I've heard some people criticize them too, but it's quite unfortunate that, and but people who buy supplements tend to be more aware and maybe more skeptical anyway. So they're probably, I mean, but that's often what somebody will send me a link to buy something on Amazon, and usually what I do is, okay, let's look up this company. Okay, see where this, and then I end up going to their website uh, and I just buy from them directly. Not to mention too, also Amazon is usually faster. It's that's one thing
Mm.
they do well, but if you're not getting what you pay for, it's not really going to help at all. It's you're just throwing your money away.
And the selection is obviously unbeatable. Like no
Yeah,
matter what store you go into, there isn't thousands of products that
yeah,
you can pick from. So yeah, it's obviously something I've used, you've used. I'm
yeah.
not saying it's not a convenient tool, but we definitely need to have scrutiny when it comes to Amazon.
Yeah, the only thing I really definitely use, I use Amazon for media, and as somebody who's written a novel, I'm grateful for what they've done for. They've really helped novelists make more money than they ever have, but I've always had a lot of questions about how they operate. It's uh, and this is kind of interesting because Amazon several years ago went out and bought Whole Foods, which of course is another place where people will go buy their supplements. They'll go to their local food co-op or sometime because usually a lot of those places have tons of supplements. Yeah, and you mentioned the testers. You mentioned Alchemist. Is that what was the other one? Sepco? Is that SEPCO or
Supco is actually
Supco?
a new
How do you spell
app,
it?
SUPPCO. They're a new
SEPC.
app,
Okay.
and it actually uses like AI, and you can build out your stacks and you can evaluate your stacks. It's really interesting, but they've done some testing that's been pretty exciting. And like I said, Now Foods has done a great job, and Now Foods is amazing when it comes to quality control and great prices.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad to know that there are companies out there that really. Sometimes you have doubts about them, but you hear good and bad things. Uh, it's certainly. Where do you think the supplement industry took off? I mean, I actually I don't know if you look back, but I actually did a panel on here when dedicated to Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw a while back. They wrote that book Life Extension. They were
Mhm.
big into supplements. I mean, is that when this started? And why do you think it's taken off? Just people are dissatisfied with the mainstream of healthcare, or
100% that, and it really started in the 80s. Linus Pauling, orthomolecular dosing of vitamins. That was the time that Linus Pauling started talking about 60 milligrams for vitamin C prevent scurvy. Okay, but what does a gram, 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C do? What is 2,000 milligrams? And so we started looking at some of these vitamins and minerals in different ways. And then there was companies in Europe that were, taking that traditional Chinese medicine, that were taking that German herbal extract medicine that was the Germans treated herbal extracts like pharmaceuticals. And, there was also Ayurvedic medicine out of India. And a lot of this was starting to build an awareness as these books started getting printed. And then GNCs grew. And don't forget, on the sports nutrition side, Arnold was almost single handedly responsible for the boom in bodybuilding. And of course, you had James Fix with jogging. You had the boom in aerobics. There was so much that was happening in the 80s that led to like a fitness boom. And then with it, supplements came into the picture. But I would say supplements had really hit their full stride maybe in the late 90s, when, like what you're talking about, when longevity and life extension really started to become um, a deeper discussion beyond just more aesthetics and getting better from colds. uh, America really started to look at them as maybe a way to maintain longevity, and a distrust in the FDA, in big pharma, was definitely taking hold in the late 90s. And I would say now
Yeah.
with Maha and RFK, it's at an all-time fever pitch.
Yeah, there was a lot of propaganda out there, and I don't know how old you are, but I can certainly remember all the fat, bad carbohydrates, good propaganda that was out there. That was just so. And unfortunately, I bought into a lot of that when I was in my 20s. It's uh,
Me
yeah,
too.
maybe just a case, of baby boomers who realized, oh, I'm starting to hit middle age, and how can I fight middle age and still act like I'm in my 20s? And people saw things that you could do. I mean, even somebody like Nolan Ryan, who who's still a god here in Texas, and was still pitching like a 30-year-old when he was 45. You're just asking yourself, what's this guy doing? And
Yeah, Tom Brady is another
yeah,
example of
yeah.
longevity for sure. Yeah.
And athletes have the money to spend on this. They can really go out and research it. I can imagine that athletes really would be pioneers for all this, and maybe they can figure out what we can learn from them.
Yeah,
Because
100%. Yeah.
they're going to training regimens or whatever. Uh, this is the thing. Herbalism though has been around forever. I mean, I've certainly the Chinese herbalism,
Mhm.
also not necessarily herbs, but Amazonian plant medicines. I mean, what can you have anything to say about any of those things? Because herbs have been around forever. I mean,
They have
ayahuasca's been around for we don't know how long, but possibly 3,000 years.
they have been around forever, and that's a great point. But when you go to those cultures,
Yeah,
so Germany in particular, like I mentioned, in Europe,
yeah,
they looked at these herbs first before they looked at pharmaceuticals. When you go down to Brazil, you have the nutritionistas, which is the name for their dietitians, essentially, they're
yeah.
nutritionists. And they, like, doctors will write prescriptions for you to visit the nutritionista, who makes you a custom supplement with a compounding pharmacy based on your blood levels, based on your needs, based on your goals. And you sit down with this nutritionist and you focus on your diet and supplements. And when you talk about, yes, Indian medicine and traditional Chinese medicine, these cultures looked at herbs first, and we're the only culture in the world that was pharmaceutical first and somehow lampooned the idea of herbs and supplements as garbage. And we all know how that's turned out. We're
You do.
68th in the world in health, despite being number one by a long shot in terms of spending. 45% of the FDA is funded by big pharma.
Yeah, it's really wild, Sean. And I don't know if we could. I don't know if you could have possibly devised a healthcare system that incorporates all the worst abuses of just everything than this one. It's true, and I don't know how we get. Not to mention this whole disconnect, really, between medicine and food. I mean, you never hear doctors talk about just eating better food. They just say go ahead and eat that food. The pharmaceuticals and I think pharmaceuticals probably did a good job at fighting various infectious diseases and other things like the polio vaccine. I had the rabies vaccine when I was 11 because we never found the dog, but now it's but we're also we've also went from we medicine also went from this of fighting infectious disease, and now we're really the main thing is we're figuring out how do we deal with chronic illness and just how do we keep ourselves from getting old really because we never because 200 years ago we nobody hardly anybody ever lived to 80 years old.
Uh, uh, yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. Everything's shifting right now. If you think about here, let me give you some statistics right now. So 1 out of 9, it's somewhere between 88% and 93% is what I've seen of US adults are metabolically unhealthy, meaning metabolically dysfunctional. 1 in 2 has pre-diabetes or diabetes. Obesity has tripled since 1980. Infertility is skyrocketing. You have 62% decrease since 1973 in sperm count. Glyphosate was found in 80% of American urine samples, including children. These are like just shocking numbers. The mental health numbers are even more shocking. I could get into those, but just
Yeah.
we're in a state of like health crisis. And I do think it is an idea of make America healthy again. We're not talking about uh like centuries ago. We're talking about a few decades ago. Things were radically different.
Yeah, and also life expectancy peaked in 2014. For people most people here, what is glyphosate? Most people out there may not know what that is.
It's Roundup is
Oh,
the common
okay.
name that's Monsanto is known for producing, and they were since bought out by Bayer, which is a big pharma company that's worth almost trillions of dollars. And they did like some really dark research on Jews during the Holocaust. And I mean, some these companies, I can't even tell you like how dark these companies go when you really dig into them. Uh, are there some good things that comes out of them? Sure. Like when we think of Bayer, we think of aspirin. Okay, like that, there's some good things, but there's also a lot of darkness when these companies are relatively unchecked. And if you think about what I said with the FDA, if 45% of the FDA is funded by Big Pharma, and guess
Yeah,
who the FDA commissioners are? They're
pharma
from Big
executive
Pharma. And guess what they do after they serve in the FDA? They go,
lobbyists.
well, a lot of times they go back to Big Pharma. It's this really sick cycle.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the only industry where this happens either. I mean, I this is being a radical free market person. I think that's the only way to go. But it's but but because it seems to where did all this start? I mean, a lot of people like to blame the John D. Rockefeller for this. I mean,
Honestly,
but
that that is
he's a common villain for a lot of things. But yeah,
that is the one I've heard quite a bit.
yeah,
And obviously, I think it goes beyond him. I
yeah,
mean, I think those were the early days of what we would call the Illuminati, and there was power that was unchecked. There was wealth that was. It's not just like 100 times or 1,000 times. Like the wealth was at that point just an absurd difference between even average, not just poverty, but just average or even a wealthy person that might have owned a company, and these super powerful elites that could literally do anything. They truly did run governments, run the police, run global economies. They were
mm,
making choices for the world. And there was a small group of families, and that's where this idea, it's not a ridiculous idea that there's a small group of people that have the majority of the world's wealth and they can do what they want to do.
Yes. So, what are some red flags that you would say that would tell you don't buy this supplement?
So the red flags would be proprietary blends.
Yes.
Something's off about the packaging. The seal's not right. The label's on not right. Maybe the sticker isn't as adhesive as it should be. The colors are off, maybe in the printing of the label.
Oh,
There's something that doesn't look right. That is a red flag. That product could be counterfeit.
okay. Yes.
Also, it does need to have a tight seal, not only with the lid, but it needs to have the seal on top that you need to pull back that's tight. It needs to have the cotton in there. It should have a desiccant pack or barrel of some kind. It should have a date on it that says when it's manufactured and how long it's good for. It should be about 2 years, a full 2 years after time of manufacture, and it should meet every one of those label claims for the full 2 years of its life. Those aren't the claims at time of manufacture. It should be for the full shelf life of the product. It should meet those claims. So that takes actually a lot of what's called stability work. Uh, with no proprietary blends also comes what I'm talking about, where I want to see the genus and species of the herb. I want to see what it's standardized for, the active it's standardized for. I want to see the plant part, root, flower, stem, etc. I want to see the dose. So now I see all these. Now I have an understanding of what I'm consuming. I'm not just trusting that hopefully it's all going to work out. We've done that with our doctors, we've done that with our politicians. It doesn't work out. We need to be the ones that are taking our health in our own hands and
Mhm.
look with scrutiny at these labels, and also reviews. Maybe, if there's bad reviews, certainly that's a sign. I would look. This is really good advice. Is the 1 and 5 star reviews? Get rid of those. Look at the 2, 3, and 4 star, and you'll find real reviews with the real issues. And that's where you can truly understand what's happening in terms of, is this a good product or not? That's where you tend to find legitimate reviews.
Okay. So, fake reviews. I also, sometimes I'll go out and buy a supplement somewhere, and especially in the Texas summer, I think to myself, well, I better not leave this supplement in the car for too long. What are some guidelines for storage, transportation of your supplements to make sure they don't, for example, if you leave your vitamins in the car in a hot Texas summer for a few days, your vitamins may be ruined. Yeah.
Uh, Absolutely. That's a great point. So these supplements are meant to last for the full shelf life under cool, dry conditions. Now, when I'm doing stability work, I'm looking at real time stability, which means I'm holding them in real, like normal conditions, and I'm testing them every few weeks, every month, whatever that looks like. But then I have accelerated stability conditions where I can assess what could be equal to 2 years in maybe 2 months. And I'm putting them under high heat and high moisture, kind of stress testing them. And you bring up a good point where many of these vitamins, for example, can oxidize under air, under moisture, under heat. So, what we want to do is sometimes we nitrogen flush the bottle and get rid of the oxygen. We have the desiccant packs or barrel to get rid of the oxygen. We have a bottle that is not clear to not let in the light. And then hopefully we're keeping them free of heat and moisture. Again, the desiccant pack can help with the moisture part, but it's important that we're not exposing it to too much heat, like you said, potentially on these trucks, especially if it's prone to being damaged by the heat. And that's where things like probiotics, for example, you don't want them shipped on some hot truck. You want them shipped on what's called a reefer truck, which means a refrigerated truck of some kind, and that costs more to ship.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I thought of something else when you said reefer truck, but yes.
Yeah.
It's, but anyway, yes, a refrigerated truck. Yeah, that makes all sense. And certainly, what about, for example, when when you're traveling? I mean, I go out for, I go somewhere for 2 weeks and I want to stay on my supplements. I've got a couple pill boxes here, but making sure they checked luggage and things like that. Is anything you want to suggest about that, or?
So this is where we are definitely seeing, yes, people are having these pill boxes, with the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah,
But even better, like there's actually really cool, you can look these up on Amazon. There's these carousels. Okay, so you buy the pill pouches and you can write on the pill pouch and you can load up the carousel that might have, 7 different slots in the carousel, and you can fill it up with all the different supplements you're supposed to take on a daily basis, and then you just turn the carousel and it fills the pill pouch. So it's a really cool way to travel, and then take those supplements with you. And of course, we're now seeing supplement companies. This is happening more and more where they're going by your CGM data, they're going by your gut microbiome data, your blood work, your data from your diet or whatever it is. And we're seeing tailored supplements being put in these pill packs with your name on them. I think we're going to see that area in supplements grow markedly over the next decade.
yeah, we could see that. Yeah, who are there any particular bad guys you'd want to call out, or not, or any people that you think just stay away from these people, whether they be gurus or
Well,
companies or?
I do think that there's supplement companies that are these fly-by-night companies you've never heard of. A lot of them are Amazon's choice because of price. And those are the ones that I would truly be concerned with. If you've never heard of that company, it's probably one guy that's really good at writing what's called VSLs, video sales letters or funnels. And he's
Yeah,
not much of a quality control guy, doesn't know anything about supplements, is not in pharmaceuticals, is not a biochemist, is not a dietitian. There's none of that. And he's just selling what's cheap and what's hot, what moves. And if you've never heard of that name, then I would not be buying from them. And on the flip side, there's great companies like Thorne, Designs for Health, um, Now Foods, Life Extension, uh, Gero, Nordic Naturals, Pure Encapsulations. These are like some really good brands
yeah.
that I would certainly lean on.
Thank you. Yes, I do buy my supplements from some of those. It's always something to be aware of. And sometimes also if you just hear them say something that is false about something else, then, and I've heard some people say, yeah, I've heard people make those claims. Says, well, what amazes me? You get all these ads on YouTube, especially, and it's amazing how these people just talk, but they don't give you anything that's really of value. It's and you're wondering, you're waiting for something, then it never comes. I don't, is there
Well,
any? Yeah,
that brings up a few things there. The FDA,
yeah,
the good part of the FDA, does not like when you make ridiculous claims.
yeah,
Okay, so if you're talking about, and in a study sometimes you can look at data from one group and another group, let's say the control group and then this experimental group, and let's say one thing increased 0.1% and the other thing increased 0.3%. You can say that it was a 300% increase, and it was basically neither one of them
yeah,
changed at all. And so when you have these ridiculous numbers, be weary. The other thing is, to your point, they should be citing research on these ingredients from healthy humans. If it's animal research, you're not allowed to claim that. If it's in diseased state people, you're not allowed to claim that. If it's from a population that isn't representative of who you're selling to, let's say if it's in elderly people, but it's a sports nutrition brand focused on 18 to 25-year-olds, that's not relative. So the studies need to be double blind, placebo controlled, and they need to be in healthy humans and representative of the population. And ideally, what's best, even better than these single ingredients, is if they've done studies on the entire product. You'll see sometimes they say was shown to increase testosterone 33% from this active ingredient in the product. Okay, but we don't know how all the other ingredients interact with that one ingredient. So, what would be far better is if they've done research on the product.
Yeah. So, uh, yeah. So, and we talked about herbs and supplements, and what are some other things you've learned from biohacking and things like that? What do you think about essential oils, for example?
Essential oils, I believe, are very powerful. Your olfactory sense is the most powerful sense in your body. And I think that's a relatively unknown area of research. We know that there's, companies like doTERRA and Young Living that are multi-level marketing companies that are multi-billion dollar companies, and they're doing quite well.
Yeah.
But what's hard about it is I like standardization. I like the doses, and it's hard to say this essential oil is standardized this way for these compounds, and then that you ingested through breathing X amount through your nose. We don't know that. That's so hard to assess. So,
True.
there are studies on these compounds that show incredible effects at relaxation, at enhanced alertness. There's studies with dementia showing reversing effects of dementia and memory loss by using certain essential oils. In particular, I think lemon balm, like spearmint, and some of the other mint oils.
Yeah.
These ones showed pretty profound effects on memory and cognitive function. We just need to do more research. I think it's a fascinating area of maybe a new frontier for sure.
Well, I always I put this thing called the Breathe Blend across my filter when I go to bed, and I always end up sleeping better. And not to mention, and granted, this I might add the don't try this at home thing, but I put oregano oil on pimples. It burns like 1,000 hells, but yeah, I still occasionally get a pimple. But boy, put it on the night before, it'll burn a lot. But then the next morning, oh, my pimple's 1/10 the size it was yesterday.
So oregano is absolutely one of the most powerful herbs that we know of for immunity.
Yeah,
There are some extremely potent compounds in oregano and garlic as well. And it's interesting that when you look at Italian food, and maybe Italians get, oh, they're having like these simple carbs with bread and pastas, and they're having lots of wine, and they have lots of oregano, olive oil, and garlic, and those are all very powerful compounds.
and maybe that explains why they can get away with eating so much pasta and stuff like that if they have all that. Because I've heard garlic is actually very good for things like uh, colds and things like that, or even a sore throat. You just eat a lot of garlic, and it
Yep.
there's a lot of stuff we're just not. I think these are some things we probably knew about, and we've kind of just forgotten about them.
Maybe not even just forgotten about. There's definitely some nefarious groups that benefit from us not talking about them, not being aware of them, because what does it help sell? It helps sell Mucinex D and whatever all these products are that are in the CVS, the Walgreens, that are in your grocery store that we rely upon once we get sick. And we know that Western medicine doesn't do a great job when it comes to preventative or prophylactic style medicine like Eastern medicine. Eastern medicine, the whole point is that you never get sick. Now, the one place I want to be in the world if I have something traumatic happen to me, as like a physical accident, is the United States. The last place that I want to be when it comes to staying well is the United States.
Also, since we're both in Central Texas, I have to bring this up. This is the allergy capital of the world, I swear. What can people do about that here? And I'm asking for selfish reasons, if nothing else, because, yeah.
That's a great one. First off, these are histamine responses. One, but backing up before I even get to histamine and kind of breaking that down is I would say that local honey is super helpful. So just taking a teaspoon of a local non-pasteurized honey that may even include the honeycomb or is kind of more in its rawest state. That's ideal. And it's been shown that local honeys are from bees having local pollens from those things that are creating the pollen that you're having a problem with in terms of your allergies. So they've shown if you go to like an immunologist or an allergist, one of the things that they'll do is put you on a low dose of the local allergens and whatever you test positive for potentially. And they'll give those to you over a certain period of time so that you build up immunity to them. Not in a high enough dose so that it triggers allergies or an immune response, but in a low enough dose that given chronically will build up your tolerance. And that's exactly what this local honey can do. One of the most powerful herbs that I like when it comes to um, having reversing some of these allergic responses is called butterbur. That's one to look at. It's really amazing when it comes to protecting you and your allergies. Is look at butterbur.
Butterberg or butter.
Butterbur, Butterbur.
Oh, okay. Butterbur. Yeah. Yes, another herb. Okay. So that's well, that's good to know. Mm, do you? I know I've had another guy on who's written about what he calls the death of death. That's the title of his book. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Jose Cordero. But do you think we're getting to a point where we may see that? I mean, see the end of the death of death? I'm not quite as optimistic. I mean, I think it'll, if anything, it'll be maybe we'll get to 150, maybe we'll get to 200. But what do you think
Uh,
will happen?
That's a great question, and it brings up more questions about what are the downsides of that. And there's been a whole field of study around that. But I would say that it's possible. There's definitely life extensionists, longevity scientists that look at death or dying as a disease, not an inevitability. And when you approach, there's Aubrey de Grey was one of the people that I studied as far back as maybe late 90s, early 2000s. He was studying a lot of the different mechanisms around aging. And at the time, he had about seven or eight. And he had something called the Methuselah Foundation. Methuselah is from the Bible. It lived for thousands
Yes.
of years, if you remember. And and then we've seen from there, there's probably about 14 or 16 different mechanisms of action around aging now, with things like senescence that's been studied, which is kind of like a dying cell that puts out these signals that it's dying and actually kind of poisons other cells. And uh, there's this detoxification that we want to have happen called autophagy, where cells get cleaned out, and even mitophagy, where mitochondria get cleaned out, and there's oxidation and glycation and inflammation. There's all these different mechanisms, and it potentially is possible. There's also something called the Hayflick limit that's really important in cells. Anyone listening, or you, Chris, can look this up. That's kind of the key behind our cellular aging. is if we can override what's called the Hayflick limit, because
How do you
this is
spell that?
where it's kind of a Hayflick. This
Okay.
is where we're kind of programmed to die at, by 120, essentially. We're programmed to not live beyond that point. And if we can override that Hayflick limit, then maybe we can live as long as some of these other species. I think sea turtles, for example, might live 400 years, or there's certain jellyfish that essentially are
Yes.
that could live forever.
The immortal
Uh,
jellyfish, and also things like tardigrades. Yeah,
yeah,
tortoises and turtles and tortoises are definitely something worth studying. Some people say it's just because they don't breathe as fast.
mm, I mean, there's something to that idea that people want to ramp up their metabolism. I want a faster metabolism. I want to burn more fat. Like that, that person's so thin despite everything that they eat. They're so type A, they get so much done. Maybe, maybe, but there's also like a flip side to that. When you think about your phone, if you turn up multitasking and you turn up the screen brightness and you turn up the volume and you make it like as loud, as bright, as many things going as possible, what's going to happen? You're going to run down the battery faster. And this can happen in human beings, I believe. So, we also see a different side to people that live a long time. Sometimes they're these, like Zen Buddhists, right? That are breathing slower, thinking slower, focused on meditation, these kinds of things. And might not be as glamorous to an American, but there's certainly something to that idea that you're expending your battery.
Yeah, there certainly is. I hear the people in the Wim Hof groups talk about that a lot because you
Hmm.
just because they're very much focused on breathing, and that's another thing too. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I think a lot of people probably aren't breathing properly, and as a result too, I mean most people probably don't realize it, but they sleep like shit.
That's a great point. I believe that the number one killer is not like stroke and heart attack and cardiomyopathies, and it's actually behind those is sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is killing people left and right because it's often undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, not treated. And so many of us have issues with that. I had severe sleep apnea because I went down this downward spiral of using, I had a neck surgery and I was using Ambien or Lunesta, and then I was using Xanax, and I was using pain pills and nerve pills, and I was getting very hypnotic sleep, like really trashy sleep. I was getting knocked out because
Yeah.
otherwise I couldn't sleep. But then I would be snoring horribly and often going a minute without breathing. And then I wake up with blood in my mouth. I'd wake up with a
Oh,
uvula the size of my throat. And I felt like I was just like I didn't even sleep. And it's not a surprise when it's no different than someone choking me for 8 hours and I'm fighting for my life with their hands around me. That's what I'm training my nervous system for. Oh, it's time to go to sleep and get choked for 8 hours. And so that can lead to, because you're not getting enough blood to these tissues, you're not pulling away the toxins from those tissues, your nervous system is in fight or flight and dysregulated. All of this is happening at night. And so you're waking up with a couple hours of bad sleep and you're not getting, 7 or 8 hours of proper sleep. And that can lead to heart attack, myocardial infarction. It can lead to stroke, a cerebrovascular accident. It can lead to all of these kinds of things. And it's massively underdiagnosed.
yeah. One thing else I forgot to ask about. What do you do for? How do you know, for example, that if you're taking supplements, that you're not just shitting them out? If
Great.
you take the vitamin C, but then you don't absorb the vitamin C, so it's just like you might as well just put a dollar bill in your mouth, swallow it, and then shit it out. It doesn't do you any good.
This is a great question. And something that kind of leads into actually what I was just talking about is yes, there's bio individuality where you, Chris, may absorb, utilize, find benefit in nutrients differently than I do. We have different genetics, epigenetics, microbiome, uh, nervous system, blood work, deficiencies, etc., different stress levels, different exposures to toxins, etc. But this is really important. I believe that if your nervous system is dysregulated and you are in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, this is known as sympathetic nervous system, different than rest and digest, which is parasympathetic. If you're continually in sympathetic nervous system, then you're not in a state where you're going to rest and digest. You're not in a state where you're going to break down, utilize, store these nutrients in an ideal way. Your body's saying, get that out of here. We're trying to survive. Like it's not saying, oh, let's utilize this. Let's break it down optimally. Like we're in a state where we can use that. So we're resistant. And this isn't just supplements. This is food. This is medications. This is psychedelics. This is interventions. Like breath work, and it becomes very difficult when your body is trained to fight, flight, or freeze to get it to relax enough to utilize these nutrients. And then take it one step further than that. If you look at the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton or Dr. Joe Dispenza, is if you become the placebo, if you NLP yourself, neuro linguistics programming,
Yes.
you give yourself affirmations, you give power to these things that you're consuming. Thank you, Lord, for the food we're about to receive, to the nourishment of my body. What do you think that prayer is doing? You're meditating, you're dropping into parasympathetic, you're telling yourself what these nutrients are used for and what they're about to do. You have gratitude. Guess what? Your whole physiology shifts, right? And so we can do this with supplements. We can say, thank you so much, Now Foods. Thank you so much, vitamin C. Thank you so much, supplement. If you want to say thank you, God, thank you, universe, whatever that looks like. And I know that this is going to make my immune system stronger. It's going to make my joints feel better. I'm going to feel more resilient and vibrant as a result. You take it, boom. What do you think? I guarantee that person has more effects than the person that didn't say that or do that. And is that the placebo effect? Absolutely. And is it something that quite often we could probably do without even the supplement? Yes, that doesn't mean we're stupid like the big pharma's told us. It means we're really powerful. We don't actually need a lot of the pills.
I love this. A scientific argument for saying grace before meals. I, it's just, which is something people don't do that like they used to. And I wonder if that makes a difference.
Oh,
It's
I believe it absolutely does. And as a matter of fact, I bet we could do a study
yeah.
where this is the one of the reasons that alcohol, I believe, is very equivocal and confusing in studies, in the nature of these studies, because if we looked at alcohol that's sipped in blue zones, when you're surrounded by family and you're having healthy food and food that you prepared and it's organic, and we're anchoring that so that every time we smell or sip that wine, we think of being supported, being loved, of having healthy food, of relaxing, versus Americans. I'm getting wasted. I'm in a bar. It's loud. People are screaming on me, hitting on me. I'm like running out of money. It's like, how do I get home? Then how does that translate? if I'm pounding the out, this is a very different anchor, psychosomatic anchoring, like the brain and the body anchoring these things, and you're telling it what to expect the second you smell it, you taste it, you feel it.
Yeah.
And so if I looked at that, I guarantee it's going to be very different. And if I gave you healthy food, but put you in traffic every day when you're eating, you would probably associate that healthy food or eating in general with trauma, with anxiety, with stress. And so you'd have poor digestion, you'd have more inflammation every time you ate. So, what is it you're doing around your eating? What is it you're doing around your supplements? Think about that.
Wow, it reminds me of that guy who was, he had two of his rules for dieting, and they were no eating in front of the TV, no eating in front of the computer. It was just, just those were his, and I don't know how well it worked for him, but it was that is something I've never that's never looked at it that way. That's just phenomenal, though.
Mm.
I think we've. You said you had about an hour, so I think we've covered just about everything. Where can we find you out there, Shawn? On the web, Shawn Wells. Yeah.
Yeah, ShawnWells.com, SHAWN. And I have a ton of content there. I do have lists of safe supplements that you can check out on Amazon.
Yeah.
I do have a ton of free content there, guides that are exhaustive and complete, and all of it is free. And then, of course, my social media where I go through stacks and infographics. And so it's at Shawn Wells, SHAWN. And I would love to answer any questions if someone wants to DM me there.
Yes, and you got all the books behind you. So yes, well, that's been great, Shawn. It's been good having you on here. I should get some other people. That was a good conference. It was a There's a lot of good people out there doing amazing things. Sometimes, Shawn, that conference used to be called Paleo FX, and sometimes I wonder if the whole COVID nonsense was just a way to destroy Paleo FX. But it looks like they're at least sort of rebuilding it. But boy, it got hit hard by the. I know other conferences that got hit hard though by the nonsense, and we never even went into all that. But it's
Agreed.
yeah.
Agreed.
So, okay, well, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Go buy my novel, Escape from the Village. Check out my Substack. And people are giving me money at buymeacoffee.com. I'm Chris Baker. We're out. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.